If I say the word budget smartphone, then what comes to your mind? Some will say value for money, average performer, compromises. Just forget those words for next 10 minutes and give me a moment to explain that why this phone can literally be the only phone you will need for your daily use. When I picked this phone up for the first time, I immediately realized that this phone is very difficult to review because people who will buy this phone have very different kind of expectations from this phone. Some will say they want absolute all-day battery life, some will dream of flagship performance, but they can't afford it, so they look towards budget smartphones. Some will want a really good camera which can improve their Instagram photos without spending tons of money just to get a good picture. All in all, I tried my best to come up with a review which can answer all your questions related to Moto G5. Let's start with the design of this phone. Every previous Moto G series phone was made completely from plastic, and this time we have got some metal in the phone. Truth is, only the backplate of this phone is metal and rest of the frame is plastic. It has its own pros and cons. Like, good thing is having a plastic frame can help you hold the phone better and there will be less risk of this phone getting slipped out of your hand. Bad thing is, you see this chrome lining running around the edges of this display? This makes it look like cheap old Samsung phones. I seriously don't know how well this chrome will stay on after some long usage. Only the time will tell. And then huge bezels really takes away the experience of a compact smartphone. Having a small 5.2-inch display with huge bezels is as good as using a 5.5-inch display phone. Motorola has ditched the beloved Moto dimple on the back. This logo you see here is a piece of metal which is stuck on the back of this phone. So don't try to do anything fancy, else this phone will get debranded. It's not a bad looking phone in my opinion. This phone looks very different from every other phone in the market, because all those phones try to copy some flagship phone, but this phone just tries to look more like its elder brother, and that's not a bad thing. Of course, there is a good sized camera bump on the back, but come on, which phone does not have camera bump in this date? It's like a standard for every smartphone. Then taking a look at sides, there is a volume rocker above, and under that there is a power button which has some ridges on it. They are a bit mushy to use, but they are not bad either. On top, there is a place for SIM tray. This SIM tray is very unusual but in a good way. This SIM tray can have 2 SIMs and 1 micro SD card, all 3 at the same time. It's not like either you get to choose between 2 SIMs or just 1 SIM and 1 micro SD card. Good job, Motorola. On the bottom, there is a traditional micro USB port, and next to it there is a headphone jack. I really wonder what if they could have given us a USB-C port in this phone. Companies should really understand that USB-C port is not a feature that should be reserved only for a flagship phone, but it's a standard that everyone should follow for better uniformity of cables in future. It's a well-built phone and there are no moving parts which makes weird noises. Holding this phone in hand is very comfortable even with those huge bezels. Now on to the hardware of this phone. There is a single speaker on this phone which also doubles as earpiece. It is not the best sounding speaker, but at least it's a front-facing speaker, which is far better than the downward-facing speaker. This is a really fast fingerprint sensor, especially for a budget smartphone, and it unlocks the phone under just 1 second. There is something special about this fingerprint sensor, which I'll talk about later in this video. By the way, just for your information, this is like the best flash I have seen on any smartphone in this price range. It's really bright. Internally, there is an NFC chip for doing some stuff. By the way, if you buy this phone in the US, then you will not get NFC chip in it for Android payments. And I seriously don't know why. Now pay attention. Motorola says that this phone has some degree of splash protection from water. Even before I tried testing waterproofing of this phone, there were videos on YouTube which claims that their phone died right after 5 minutes from the moment they poured water on this phone. So take that with a grain of salt and be careful from water when using this phone. On front, there is a 5.2-inch IPS LCD display on this model. There is even a smaller variant of this phone which has a 5-inch display. The display on whole is really sharp with 1080p resolution, and it has excellent viewing angles. It can be visible enough in direct sunlight. So what could else go wrong? Well, This display has just a tad bit of dull colors and the overall display looks undersaturated. It's not a huge problem because everything you do on this phone, you will never even notice that this display has something called undersaturation. But when you compare it with some other displays in same price range, you will feel something is lacking. So how is the performance of this phone? These are the benchmark numbers of previous Moto G series phone. Okay, these are the benchmarks of my daily driver OnePlus 3T. As a matter of fact, this phone has the fastest processor on any Android phone till the end of this month. Now get ready. These are the benchmarks of Moto G5 Plus with 4GB RAM variant. There is a significant price difference in these two phones, but not in performance. Performance is the main thing about this phone which ticks a lot of boxes. This phone has Snapdragon 625 chip inside it along with 4GB RAM. By the way, there is even a 3GB RAM variant for buying if you have an even tighter budget. I would say that this phone 95% of the time feels smooth as a $800 flagship phone. There is a plenty of smoothness while scrolling pages or switching between applications or playing some heavy games. I recently did a whole video on how well this phone can handle gaming. I will leave a link down below if you want to check it out. I can promise you one thing. This phone is truly reliable when it comes to performance. Trust me, for many people this phone can do everything they need for daily use without breaking a sweat. If you can buy 4GB variant of this phone, then buy it. That extra 1GB RAM will help you a lot when multitasking between applications. So how can you improve the performance of this already great smartphone? The answer is by installing stock Android on this phone. Motorola does the absolute amazing job for loading their phones with stock Android Nougat 7.0 with Google Assistant built in. Now this phone has virtually no bloatware or unnecessary software to slow it down, but there are just very simple and logical Motorola tweaks which can improve the experience of using this phone. Like there are Moto gestures. Double chopping can turn on the flashlight quickly. Then there is a double twist to turn on the camera. This year we have something called one button navigation on this phone. Basically you are getting to choose between on-screen buttons or this new everything doing button. And here's how it works. You can unlock your phone with the scanner as normal, and when you're in the phone you can swipe left to go back, tap once to use it as your home button, swipe right to use application switcher. Hold it for longer period of time to use Google Assistant and hold it for shorter period of time to turn off the screen. If you don't like this kind of interface, you can easily switch back to on-screen buttons, but that means it will take some space on the screen. To me, it was slower than using on-screen or touch buttons, and even confusing too. I seriously don't think it's a good replacement for on-screen or touch buttons anytime soon. I don't know how many extra dollars it would have taken to use this space for including touch buttons on this place. It does take some cues from Google Pixel to bring swipe up to reveal the app drawer, but it lacks the Google Pixel like weather widget on the top and Pixel search widget. Anyways, it is a truly great software to use on a budget smartphone especially. These are the camera specs of last year's flagship phone Samsung Galaxy S7, and these are the camera specs of this Moto G5 Plus. On paper, these two have exactly same camera specs. So don't you think you are getting flagship camera for a fraction of the price? Unfortunately, this is not the case in real life. I would say as long as you're in well-lit conditions or in daylight, then you can pull off some really great looking pictures. Sometimes it really nails them and you really won't believe it was captured on a budget smartphone. The focus is always on point and there is a lot of background blur which many people love. But I feel that this camera produces really contrasting and over-sharpened images, and that can take away the reality factor from the images. Even the HDR mode is really impressive too, which tries to capture every bit of detail in the frame. Move to some low light place and this is where this phone gets a huge hit on the image quality. Images are really noisy and it tries to overexpose the shots in low light conditions. Even the colors are also dull compared to reality, but it will get the bare minimum job done to capture some detail in the low light. There is an option to record 4K video on this phone, but the lack of image stabilization can ruin the fun of recording video on this phone. So just try to use this camera with some stability. On front, there is a wide selfie camera to get more in the frame, and it does a good job of capturing images in good light, but sometimes it really struggles to focus on the face. There is even a pro mode which lets you adjust everything in the camera settings. But Let's be real, most people who will buy this phone are kind of people who use point and shoot more than a pro mode. By no means it's a really great camera, but when compared to other phones with the same price, it is really best in the class. I was really impressed with the battery performance of this phone. It has 3000 mAh battery which can easily manage to give you full day use and a screen on time of nearly 4 to 6 hours considering your heavy to moderately use respectively. And if you are in a hurry, then you are getting turbocharger to boost some juice quickly in it. That was a long review. So is it worth buying? I would say you are getting almost flagship like performance with amazing battery life, and it is good phone to upgrade to. Even if you are using Moto G5 Plus, you are getting a lot with just a small price increase. It will easily last you for 2 years depending on how you use it. These are some configurations and prices for the reference to buying this phone. It is not the best smartphone, but it is really hard to find some other better phone at this price. It is simply an outstanding phone for many people. Thanks for watching. Until then, take care of those pixels.